Welcome to EDO Breakthrough, the podcast where we tackle economic development challenges head on. From small towns to bustling cities, every place has its own hurdles to overcome. The EDO Breakthrough podcast creates an environment of collaboration, innovation, and understanding where we can share our real-life challenges and brainstorm solutions. I'm your host, Sandy Dubé, a certified economic developer and founder of PPR Strategies. Each week, we'll be welcoming a different, brilliant, place-based mind to talk through real-life economic development challenges that have been shared with us by you, our gracious listeners. We're doing something a little different this week. I'm here with one of my colleagues, Kayla Sherry, who is our social media coordinator at PPR Strategies. And Kayla is going to join me and we're going to talk about all things social media. So before we dive into the social media details, Kayla, would you like to share a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Kayla. As Sandy said, I'm the social media coordinator at PPR, and I've been here since July 2023, so coming up on 2 years this summer. And this is actually my first full-time job ever. So before this, I was in college getting my bachelor's degree in social media theory and strategy. And yes, it's a real degree. But yeah, I was in college doing some internships, part-time social media experience. And then I moved to Frederick and I'm working at PPR. So it's been a blast.
One of the things I'll never forget about the interviewing process with you, Kayla, was when I went to check your references. Do you remember who you listed as a reference?
Yeah, I listed the president of my university, and he's actually retiring now, but you had a conversation with the president of my university, and I'm so glad that he responded to you and had nice words to say. And yeah, he's great.
Awesome. I had a similar small school experience, state school experience in West Virginia when I went to Shepherd College, now Shepherd University. And yeah, at the time, I don't know if the president of the university would have given me a reference, but it is certainly fun to have those experiences and be involved on your college campus and be able to go back and connect and engage with students that are just a couple of years behind you in that process. I'd love to know, this was not in any of our prepared questions, so I'm just going to throw a fun one out. What did you think economic development was before you started with PPR Strategies? Did you have any idea of that phrase?
No, I had not heard of it explicitly before I came across the job posting for PPR and did some of my own research. But I did some government related work in college, mostly pertaining to higher education and some local government things. So I kind of had an inkling of what it was about once I did more reading about it. But yeah, just supporting your community, supporting small businesses, growing your community. That was kind of the general idea I got out of my preliminary research, and I was sold.
Awesome. And so we take this idea of, helping, supporting the economic development, tourism, place-based work, and apply some of your social media strategies. I'm curious where you, have found maybe some of your biggest surprises, or things that you were kind of a surefire thing. Like I would imagine LinkedIn and economic development seems pretty straightforward. Can you talk a little bit about that connection?
Yeah. Since you mentioned surprises, I guess just a little bit of a learning curve for the type of clients that we work with in economic development would be finding the right visuals to kind of help with that storytelling, especially on platforms like Instagram, which tend to be the standard platform that most marketers will gravitate towards. Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, depending on what it is. You have to have visuals that stand out and photos that connect to the message that you're conveying. And we don't always have that. If it's not like a tourism-based department or organization, sometimes we struggle to have those photos that will resonate with people or that will catch people's attention. So that was something that was a little bit challenging or just different compared to like when I was promoting college clubs or the nonprofit that I worked with. Like we always had pictures of people and at events, and that's not always as readily available. So that's something that was a little bit different.
Interesting. Yeah, you're right. I know that it's always a struggle that we have oftentimes with clients, with organizations that we're supporting, to get really good visuals that are true and authentic and not stock photography. And so making an effort and helping them to understand how to make it easy and not I don't know, a painful task at the end of the day. But let's talk a little bit about some common misconceptions that people have related to social media. And, you obviously talked about Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, but talk to me about, why it's important for EDOs to have a presence on social.
Yeah, I think when I hear the word misconception and connection to social media, I think mostly about um, how people don't see it as a formal or legitimate marketing platform, or they think it's silly and just for kids. And especially with TikTok, we still hear that a lot where maybe economic development organizations are seeing the like super viral content of like TikTok dances or the really outrageous, humorous content. And they think, well, that doesn't really fit with my brand. That doesn't make sense for me. But it's all about your audience and what they want to see from you. So that's going to vary depending on the brand or organization. You're not going to be at the level of Duolingo or Poppy where they can take a little more risk, but you can still create really impactful content that connects with your audience. And that's the core of a lot of economic development work, is just connecting with your community and building that trust and exchanging information. And that is still what social media is all about. That's kind of what it was founded on, was connecting people. So that's why economic development organizations need to be on social, and they need to be talking to their audiences and finding ways to reach them effectively.
Yeah, over the years, it's interesting. We've worked with organizations who, at the very beginning of Facebook, they wanted to prevent comments and just post and share information, just push it out. And that obviously removes the social piece of social
Yeah.
media by saying, no, 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 what was going to be a two-way conversation, we're just going to blast to you. So I love seeing how EDOs and us in this profession have evolved and feel more comfortable and appreciate hearing the information. And I'd love to maybe even dive in on a little bit of social listening and what that means for this space and or what it just means in general. Actually, while we're on that thought, Kayla, do you have thoughts on or advice or tips on social listening?
Yeah. There's lots of different platforms that kind of host that type of like social listening or community engagement, but you don't necessarily need to use like a third party. It's really just taking time out of your day to ensure that you're checking all of your channels, responding to comments, responding to any messages that you get, because that's just another way for people to get in contact with your team other than emailing. And the search features on a lot of these social platforms have really improved. So you're able to just maybe search for your community's name and see what people are talking about in relation to your area or whatever it may be. And you can kind of interact with people outside of your network in a way. So maybe they're not following you, but they're talking about your community. So you can just like their content, or you can comment back something positive and kind of continue that conversation. So it's just looking for those opportunities to connect with people instead of just posting content and kind of leaving and not really doing anything extra. So yeah, that's just another way to make social media social.
Awesome. when we talk about planning and the strategy of behind social media and that type of engagement, um, I'd love to hear your thoughts and have you, share in terms of some best practices, some trends for the platforms that EDOs should be on, maybe what to do and why and how. Any advice that you have on how to engage on different platforms?
Sure. I'll try to keep it brief because uh,
You
I
don't have to keep it brief. Sit back. She's going to go deep. Here we go.
was going to plug our social media guide for EDOs, but we'll pull some bits and pieces from that. But we'll include that link and you can download that when this episode is out there. Um, but the basics of forming a social media strategy or kind of just determining like what you want to do on social media, if strategy sounds like too much, like too big of a word, is knowing your audience and defining that very clearly, who you want to talk to and kind of what you want to be saying to them, and then going from there. So determining which platforms they're on the most. Um, so again, typically Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and having just a presence on all of those is really key. Um, it might vary, seeing how active you are on each of them. So that's kind of where understanding your audience clearly comes into play. So maybe you post a little bit more about a certain topic that appeals to your Facebook audience. So you might have more content on Facebook versus the more professional side with LinkedIn. So it depends on your audience. It also depends on your capacity. So if you are a one person marketing team who does all types of other marketing, then you might only be able to create one piece of content that gets posted across all three of these platforms, even though it might be more beneficial to customize it to each platform. But that also just comes into play. You have to understand how much capacity you have to create the content, post the content, manage the content before you're trying to stretch yourself too thin.
Yeah, that's great. You're right. It's one thing to have all these dreams and know like the quote unquote kind of best practice, but the reality is, um, we only have certain number of hours in the day, and I'm not a huge fan of the software that you put the message in once and it populates on all platforms because, kind of to your point, Facebook has a different way of phrasing things. We like things to be said and viewed differently on Instagram, and same with LinkedIn. But is it better to be doing, something rather than nothing? Or, should you pick and I'm just curious of your opinions. And obviously every case is different. And we do debate this all the time in the office, but I'm curious of your thoughts on picking and choosing your audience and your platform preferences.
Yeah, I would say that quality and consistency matters more than quantity. So if you want to have an established presence on like Pinterest and TikTok and all of these different platforms, that's fine to like just make sure that you have a presence there and maybe a link to your website so people can still find you. But um, yeah, you really have to prioritize the ones that you can actually keep up with and provide that quality content to. Because if you're only posting on each of these platforms once a month, then your content is not really going to be seen by the audience that you want to see it. So you have to prioritize. And sometimes you might have more time to create content for all of these platforms, but you have to think long-term consistency and what is going to be manageable. And you can always grow from there. So you could start small and grow from there. But I would say starting small might be the best option if you're kind of new to social media marketing or you're looking to up it. So yeah,
Cool. Yeah, one of the things, as you know, I always say, it's not about you; it's about your
yeah,
audience. It's about where they are and how they want to receive information. So our podcast listeners are going to be a different audience and want to receive information differently. Those of you that are listening, I would love to hear if you ever read our newsletter, the PPR newsletter, or if you only consume information through this podcast. Again, different approaches, different tactics to reach different people with their preferences. What are you seeing in terms of trends these days? I know, I roll my eyes every time somebody says Twitter or X. And, now we're seeing, other platforms kind of filling their space. What do you have any trends that you want to talk about or predictions for the rest of we're talking about this now in 2025? So any thoughts?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of changes across these platforms in terms of like the features that they're testing out or the things that they're prioritizing. Like Facebook has been going through a lot of changes. They recently kind of scaled back their fact checking um, abilities or preferences on there. And Instagram was talking about potentially getting rid of highlights, which has been a pretty solid part of Instagram, or just like something that people expect to be there. So it seems like there's a lot of changes happening. Um, but what I'm seeing in terms of like consumer preferences is content from real people, like authentic content from real people, or just genuine, trustworthy content if it's from an organization or brand. And that's kind of hard to work towards. You have to work towards that over time. It's not just we posted one like really transparent post and now we have everyone's trust. That's something that you have to work towards. And that kind of goes into like building those relationships with other organizations that maybe you're creating collaborative content with, or working with local creators to kind of do like an influencer partnership campaign, and kind of showing that other people are backing up the message that you're putting out. Because you can say, oh, my community is great, everyone should come visit here, or this program is really great for small businesses. But if you're the only one saying it, then people might not take the action that you want them to take. So they kind of need to hear from outside entities and kind of build that credibility for you.
Interesting. I just made a note about influencers, so we're going to get back to that in a minute. But I'd love to talk a little bit about the kind of how to identify where your audience is. Um, I know when I talk about this topic, I always suggest going old school. If you don't know, then ask them. Find out who they are. If you are connecting with your local businesses on Main Street, walk up and down Main Street and ask them what they're doing, how they're consuming information, how they're communicating with their customers. If you are meeting people at a conference, asking if LinkedIn, if that's, oftentimes that's kind of a first point of contact. But any advice on how to find out and prioritize some of these options in reaching your target audience?
Think you covered the major point about like having to talk to the people that you're actually trying to target or work with, because every community or area is going to be a little bit different. There might be one county where the businesses prefer to communicate in a Facebook group, and the other might prefer to just have like a private Slack channel or something like that. It really does depend. So talking to those people directly and getting that information directly from them is important. There's lots of studies that are always put out about like age demographics that are on LinkedIn versus Facebook versus Instagram. So you can also look into data like that. That's constantly being updated. But you also kind of have to put yourself in their shoes. So try to think like a consumer, like a social media user. And that's easy for me since I consume a lot of social media content personally and professionally. So I feel like I have both of those perspectives of a marketer and someone who's consuming that content. But yeah, you don't want to get lost in we're creating content without thinking about what people actually want to see. So you kind of just have to take yourself out of that marketer hat for a second and put yourself in the consumer's shoes.
One of my favorite things with the team is the we are truly a multi-generational team. I think we've got, Gen Zs, millennials, and Gen X all within, the full-time PPR team. And so the pushback on things is always fun, and the kind of the debates and the conversations and the why this and that is always great. And one of the things that I get from you periodically is creating video content and not having everything look super produced. Can we go down that rabbit hole a little bit and give people permission to not overly produce every video that they're going to be sharing on social?
Absolutely. We hear that issue a lot where if we're suggesting video content, sometimes clients will say, well, we don't have access to a professional camera or a studio, or if we do have access to a professional photographer, it's going to take a lot longer than expected to crank out that content. But now when most professionals probably have some type of smartphone with a pretty nice camera, it's easier to just record that content on your phone and even edit it on your phone for free. I use a free editing app for a lot of video editing things, and you can even edit it in Instagram, in TikTok. So it's a little more accessible now to create video content, and you don't have to be professional, because if it looks too much like an ad, people don't really want to see it on social media. They might not listen or even give you a chance if it looks like this really overly produced commercial is popping up in their feeds.
Such a good point. I love it. Okay, so my other favorite topic is repurposing content, and the idea of, well, we all know it takes a lot to produce content the first time, and so why have that, live and die in a blog post or in a podcast? Can you talk with our listeners a little bit about the this idea of repurposing and what to do with, that one piece of thought leadership on LinkedIn? Then we turn it into a blog and it, influences some podcast content or whatever. Can you talk a little bit about your approach and thoughts related to repurposing?
Yeah, we kind of mentioned this earlier about not having the exact same message across every platform if you have the capacity to customize it to each platform. So that's kind of the same idea, is you can have this piece of content and have the foundation of it, but then you can kind of make it fit into whatever channel you're trying to expand its reach on. So you can turn your blog post into maybe an Instagram reel about top 5 tips that we talked about in this blog that we just posted. Or it doesn't even have to be recent content that you're repurposing. You can take content from previous years or something that you posted last month and kind of bring it back into the social media feed or wherever it may be, because people might have missed it. They don't typically stalk your account and look at every single piece that you've posted every single day. So with the overabundance of content on social media, chances are that some stuff gets missed. So just you can keep pushing it out, but you don't want to be too repetitive. You don't want to overwhelm your audience. So you kind of just have to use discretion and know, like, oh, it's been a couple of weeks since we posted that, but it didn't get a lot of engagement. Maybe we try a different angle on it and post it again.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you. And yes, I love permission to share something that you did share one time. Let me share it again because that was a lot to be a one and done, or even just shared once in a week. So that's awesome. Thank you for that. Okay, let's talk about influencers and what that means. We think about influencer marketing, and oh my gosh, I'm sure many different thoughts come to mind. And I know we've done a recent campaign where we, engaged some influencers for, a gift card, shop local campaign. Can you talk a little bit about influencer opportunities and any advice that might be helpful?
Sure. I think when we're talking about influencer marketing for economic development organizations, people might be a little intimidated or think that it's not super relevant if they're thinking of like celebrity endorsements and brand collaborations that we see on a larger scale. But when it comes to economic development, you're typically working with local creators, people who know and live in your area or who visit your area frequently or have some kind of stake in your community. So typically you would use them for boosting awareness about something or trying to increase positive perception about like an event or a program that you have, like you said, a community gift card program. So kind of amplifying that message through other creators who have used it. And that we kind of talked about credibility as well. Like that helps you reach your target audience more effectively, but also helps build that trust and shows that you are the real deal, that you are offering something that is beneficial to the people that are receiving that content. And they might be a little more likely to act upon it. I think it's similar to parenting. I'm not a parent, but I've heard from many parents that in order to get a message through your child's head, sometimes they need to hear it from someone else. So I think in a weird way, that's the same idea, is hearing it from those influencers or creators who are real people, residents that have done whatever action you want people to do. And you're hearing that story from them instead of just the organization that's promoting it.
I love that analogy. Really really good. And thank you for the disclaimer for our listeners that you are not a parent, but you do have a cat now. So that's, that's a child. Like a child that doesn't grow up is always still dependent on you. Um, so I keep going back to my list because you keep reminding me of things, and I'm sure I'm killing you by not having any of this on our prep notes ahead of time. I just keep thinking of fun topics. It's like we're sitting in the office, just chit chatting on any normal day, and you're like trying to get to work, and I just keep thinking of things that I want to talk about and pick your brain on. So thank you for indulging me in this conversation.
Of course.
Can we talk about content calendars and planning? Oh my
What do you
gosh.
want to know?
It's like it's one of those things that everybody you need to do, or you should do in order to be most effective and efficient with your time. But do you have any best practices, thoughts, to make it a little less intimidating for people to start content planning?
Yeah, we also have a free resource for this. We made a 2025 content inspiration calendar, and that kind of lays out all of the dates and things that you can plan ahead for. So typically, you don't want to be planning too far ahead because things can change, or you just want to leave room for that really last minute content, or maybe it's news or updates about something that's very timely. But our content calendar kind of lists the monthly themes and holidays that might be relevant for you when you're planning your content. And it also helps you understand maybe like when not to post. So if there's holidays where a lot of people are taking off or your office is closed, like planning ahead for those moments. But yeah, creating your content calendar and having those special dates in mind, that's really beneficial because then you can create content ahead of time for that and not have to worry about doing it last minute. And then when you're in maybe a busier time of the year, you're not scrambling, you can kind of set it to the side. It helps to plan ahead when you can.
And do you use fancy software to do this planning?
No, I typically use Google Sheets. So that way it's shareable with everyone on the team or our clients, whoever it is. And you can change it all the time. It auto saves, but you just have to find a system that works for you and organize it however you see is best for your organization. We tend to just have the date. If there's any notable day, so like a holiday or maybe an event that's coming up, just so we can kind of see visually that it's 3 weeks away and we need to be planning content around it. We also have what social media post is going out on that day, what newsletter is going out on that day. So you can have your full editorial calendar in there. But if you just want to do social media, you can do that. You can do Instagram post, Facebook post, LinkedIn post, and kind of differentiate it that way and organize it. But again, it's really whatever works for you.
Cool. Okay, so those were my favorite topics, but I do know that one of the things that you teach me every single month is about some element of analytics. Talk to me about analytics and what people could or should be looking at to monitor and have that shape and improve and strengthen their social reach.
We typically track analytics on a month-to-month basis, and you can go smaller if you want. You can track analytics and record it every single week or whatever it may be, but typically we see the most comprehensive results from like a month-to-month basis. So that's typically what we would recommend, is going through at the end of the month and pulling those analytics from the different platforms. You don't need fancy software for that either. You can go in the Meta Business Suite. All other platforms should have some form of native analytics that you can look at for free. And recording that just so you can see your progress over time, and you can see, oh, in February we had lots of impressions, and kind of looking into what you posted that month and leaving some notes for yourself, like, oh, well, we did a Valentine's Day related campaign that tested out some new video format or something like that. And then you can see, oh, people really resonated with that. Maybe we should implement that for next month's campaign, or kind of taking those insights and understanding the why behind the numbers, because sometimes the numbers don't tell the full story. It's easy to get lost in vanity metrics too. Like if you're just looking at followers or likes or something like that, again, they don't tell the full story all the time. So it depends on your goals, and it can fluctuate for random reasons as well. Like sometimes there's just an overabundance of content, or the algorithm isn't favoring your content this month for some reason. But yeah, you have to look beyond the numbers and really analyze your content and why it did well or didn't do well.
Cool. Okay, so we started talking about social media platforms and our target audiences and content calendars and influencers and repurposing content and analytics. What are we missing? I know that there's so much more out there, but is there anything else that you think our audience you'd like to share with our audience today?
We talked about so many different topics. It really just, in general, with social media, you have to have fun with it, and it is serious to a degree, especially for economic development, but don't take yourself too seriously or too formally. Like social media is supposed to be about authentic connections, and you just have to find the right voice to achieve that with your audience. So have fun, be creative, and your content will reach the people that it's supposed to reach.
Well said. Thank you. So the final question that I like to ask our guests is, Kayla, what was your EDO breakthrough?
See, I listen to the podcast every week, so you think I would have come prepared with this answer. I don't know if it's a breakthrough, but it's something that makes me feel really fulfilled in this work, is when we do have the opportunity to promote different programs that were not available to me as like a resident, or that I didn't even know existed for business owners, like those types of things. Like maybe there's workforce development programs that are really helping people have access to the next steps in their career, or just like those community gift card programs that are really focusing on shopping local and making sure that the local small business community is empowered. So that is just really refreshing to kind of see all of the things that are available and all the work that economic development organizations are doing, because I didn't really know about all these things before I was actually working in economic development. So it's great now that I get to work towards making that more well known for people. So that was a semi-recent breakthrough that I had about like why I really enjoy doing what I do.
Okay, I cannot add anything else to that. That was beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. You're right. You're right. It's important, and you're helping communities and organizations share their message with their audiences. So I thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for indulging us in the podcast. And sometimes it's hard to hear yourself, so you may not listen to this replay, but just know that you kicked butt. So this was great.
Thank you.
And with that, I will say thank you to our listeners. If you've got questions that you'd like us to dive into on future episodes, please let us know. Otherwise, until next time, we'll see you soon. The EDO Breakthrough podcast is brought to you by PPR Strategies. PPR Strategies, standing for People and Places Reimagined, is a strategic consulting firm working specifically with EDOs and other place-based organizations. We share the unique stories of communities through communication, strategic planning, marketing, media relations, and more. Visit us at pprstrategies.com and find our contact information in the show notes. I'd like to give a big thank you to you for listening. Remember, together we are unstoppable.